Hi, welcome back. Today, I'm going to be reviewing more Minecraft items using a tier list. In the last video, we went over woods and stones, and here are my tier lists here. So, I saw this comment on the last video saying to do ores, so that's exactly what I'm doing. Here are all the ores. So we're going to start with iron. Iron, I feel like iron is a very useful block. It's used throughout Minecraft. Making hoppers are very important. Making iron tools to start off your world. You can make iron farms, which kind of puts the iron ore to use. However, iron is still a very important tool. If iron farms weren't existent, I would say this is S tier, but iron is a very important tier, or important block, sorry. So I'm going to put it at A tier because it's just kind of the standard first kind of ore block, I guess, that you truly mine in Minecraft. So I'm going to put it at A. It's very useful, so definitely A tier fits this well. Next up is gold ore, which, similar to iron, is kind of a block that you mine at the very beginning, although you can't mine this, I don't think, unless you have a diamond pickaxe. I'll put a test up on screen now. So for that reason, I don't think it's nearly as good as iron, plus you can make gold farms using piglins in the nether, so I'm unfortunately going to have to rank this higher. Might even do D tier, but I'm going to stick with C tier for now. That might actually be moved depending on where I rate other blocks, but I'm going to put it at C tier for now. Next up is nether gold ore, which, similar to gold, you get gold from it. So it's not nearly as good as the gold ore block because you don't get the ingots from it if you get the ore block itself. And then in 1.17, I believe you get some weird version of gold. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't played it all in the snapshots. When I'm recording this, it's 1.16. I'm just using the new textures because I need to force myself to like them. So, they're here. Anyways, nether gold ore, for the reason that you get nuggets instead of the block itself and get ingots, I'm going to put it below the normal gold ore block. So D tier, lowest tier so far. Next up is the coal ore. And I think it's very similar to iron. It's very important throughout all of Minecraft's playthrough, no matter where you are. Sometimes I find myself just having to mine coal because I can't find it any other way. Very important. You're always having to mine for coal. Very important for making torches, fuel sources. So I'm going to put that at A tier with iron. Next up is lapis ore, and similar to these two, you can't really farm unless you get, I believe, clerics. I think is the only way to get lapis besides mining. Very important for enchanting early on. However, once you kind of get your first set and first tools, you get villagers, and you kind of use those to get your armor from that point on. So it's not really all that important. So it's not, I'd say, as important as those two. So I'm going to put it at B tier. However, still very important ore to always be mining and very important block to always be getting. Next up is the very important block, diamond ore. It is probably the most important block in all of Minecraft. It's kind of shown the light of Minecraft being the most important block throughout the history of the entire game, pretty much. So without a doubt, it's going in S tier. Very important block. Definitely deserves its spot in S tier. Next up is redstone ore, which is very important for redstone. However, not nearly as important as iron and coal, I don't think, because if you're not a redstoner, you don't like using redstone, there's no need for it. So if everyone in the Minecraft community was a redstoner, this block would definitely be more important. However, I think it's very similar to lapis. You use it once and you mine for it once, and then you're kind of done with it. So it's going to go with lapis in B tier. Next up is emerald ore, which is also very important. It's very hard to find. I think you can only find it in cliffs terrain. However, you can farm emeralds very easily using villagers, so it's not that big of a deal. However, it's still a very important block. If this was the only way to get emeralds, very important, so it's definitely going to go at B tier. Next up is nether quartz ore, which gives you the quartz block. Kind of a scuffed ore. I don't really consider it all that much. However, it does have ore in the name, so I'm going to throw it in here anyways. Definitely very important. I'm kind of debating whether to put it in C or B tier. Not exactly sure which one I kind of want to go with. It's very important. However, it doesn't really kind of count as an ore. Like I'm saying, you can't really use it. Obviously, use this for tools. Very important. Making tools, things like that. You can, trade with it. So it's not as important as the other one. So I'm going to put it down in C tier. Again, I'm pretty sure you could farm this using villagers, as you can pretty much with all of these other ones. They're used for villagers. So definitely going to put that down at C tier here. Last but certainly not least is netherite. Using ancient debris to get netherite is very, very tedious. If you want to get a full block of netherite in survival, it's very hard. I think you need 36 ancient debris. It's a very important block. Better than diamonds, you could say. However, you do need diamonds to get netherite. So diamonds are technically just as good as netherite. However, I would add a top tier, but at the same time, I just can't do that to diamonds. I feel like diamonds deserves a top spot, so it's going to share that with ancient debris and netherite there. So that is the ores tier list. We're going to move on to dyes. So here are all the dyes. However, the dyes not going to be able to be placed up on this wall here, so using the power of editing, these dyes will now all turn into, let's say, wool. Alright, there we go. All of this is now into wool, so we can start off grading. I'm going to go 3 at a time rather than just the 1 because it's going to take a while for me to edit all this, so. Alright, starting up with red, orange, yellow. I'm going to be using this chart a lot for this progress because I'm going to be ranking this on how easy it is to obtain them. So if we zoom in on red, you can see that there's multiple ways to obtain this. I actually didn't know that you could get it through beetroots, but apparently you can. I don't know if that's smelting or crafting. However, you can get red dye that way, so it's actually a lot of ways to do it. So we're also going to put it at A tier because you can farm the poppies, which are shown in this image, using iron golem. So it's very easily to farm if you can set up an iron farm. So we're going to put this here. We're going to skip orange for now and go to yellow because yellow, looking at the chart, you'll see that we have 2 flowers there, which is quite easy to obtain, especially sunflowers, so we're going to put it at C. However, not really that exciting at all, so I'm going to put it there, and then orange in between, because if you look at the chart, you use yellow and orange, or yellow and red to make orange, and both of those are above and below it, so it just makes sense to put this in the middle. Next up is lime, green, and cyan. If we look at the list, you can see that lime I was actually using sea pickles to make. I did not know that, and green dye I'm going to actually rank first, believe it or not, because green dye is very easy to farm using cactuses. So we're going to put this at B tier. We're also going to put lime above this because skeletons are actually very easy to farm, and we need white dye to use, possible to make it with the green dye from down here. So we're going to put lime dye up here just because skeletons are very easy to farm. Then we have cyan dye, which is very easy to get because you can use green dye and you can also use blue dye. So we're going to put this at B tier just for that reason. Next up is light blue, blue, and purple dye. Light blue is pretty easy to get because you can farm it using white dye, which I again said was very easy to get, and blue dye, which is also pretty easy to get. So we're going to put light blue dye at A tier. We're going to put blue dye down at B tier because, like I said, very easy to get. Makes more sense of how I ranked all of green and blue, which makes cyan, all in the same tier, and then obviously white, which would go here, putting light blue up here. Purple is also pretty easy to get. Again, you can just use red dye and blue dye, which are again in A and B, so it's going to go right there. So that is that 3. Next up is magenta, pink, and brown. If you look at the list, I believe magenta is probably the most filled out box because magenta is a very easy dye to collect. It's going to put that S tier. You can use it in multiple flowers, using multiple dyes itself to create, using how these are. It doesn't really even matter where those dyes are because there's just so many ways to get it. So we're going to put it at S tier. Pink, not nearly as easy, but still very good. We're going to put this down at A tier because multiple flowers and dyes are used to create this. Brown dye, again, is farmable, so we're going to put this at C tier because although cocoa beans are very easy to farm, it takes a while to get a hold of this many. Next up is light gray dye, black dye, and white dye. Light gray dye, again, similar to magenta, has many ways to obtain. You can use it through multiple dyes, multiple flowers. I believe there's 3 flowers in the game that give you light gray dye, so it's very helpful to get. Gray dye is also very easy to get using white dye, which I said was going to go in A tier, so I'm going to stay true to that, put that at A tier. Gray dye is going to be put at B tier for one reason. Not only is the only way to get it using black dye, which I'm going to put at the absolute lowest at D tier because the only way to get black dye is to kill squids. Very much a pain in the backside to get, and that honestly kind of lowers gray dye because of how easy it is to get bones, but how difficult it is to get black dye using squids. So that's going to lower gray dye's little standings there. However, that is the dyes tier list all set and done. Alright, so that is the ores and dyes tier list completely done now. So these are the rankings for the ores, these are the ranking for the dyes. I also have the spare tier list here that was just made just in case I wanted to do more, but I just decided these 2 were enough for today's video. Because that is today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe. It's the best way to help me out on the channel here. Thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for more.